When I walked past my wife at a party, she was telling a friend about all the cheating and said that I was a nobody, but then regretted it. I couldn't stand the get-togethers at the Bayside Club. Every few weeks, it felt like they found endless reasons for some pointless party so a group of wealthy folks could gather and flaunt their egos. My wife, Sarah, absolutely loved attending these events and always looked forward to them. Unfortunately, in recent months, she'd been drinking far too much and often ended up embarrassing both herself and me. Sarah and I had been married for nearly 18 years, and we had 2 kids who were both in high school. I met Sarah while earning my MBA, and we hit it off right away. Things started to cool down between us about 8 years ago, and I assumed it was just a natural progression. I would have appreciated more affection and intimacy, but I didn't want to push it. Eventually, I resigned myself to the fact that the rest of my life would be less than romantic. I had a good job and earned a decent salary, but putting 2 kids through high school took a significant chunk out of our budget and savings. Still, we were financially comfortable. Sarah didn't need to work and had no interest in doing so. She spent her time on community work and social activities, which my income supported. She still looked great for her age, thanks to frequent visits to the spa and salon. I was an average guy with a bit of a belly and some gray at the temples. I dressed well because of my job and Sarah's love of shopping. Although I was good at my job, I wasn't particularly happy. I was ready for something new, something I could enjoy without worrying about the paycheck. I also wanted to move somewhere else. The house was too big for just the 2 of us, and I hated the cost and time involved in maintaining it. Sarah refused to even discuss such ideas. She wanted her big house, Bayside Club, and wealthy friends. At one such gathering, I wandered around the club, joining in small conversations about trivial matters. The night was dragging on, and I had been nursing my last drink for over an hour. Sarah, on the other hand, was just getting started. It appeared she had been drinking more than usual, and it showed. About a dozen of the local socialites were sitting together, chatting away. As I approached, the conversation seemed to be about relationships, so I decided to leave. Just as I turned to walk away, I heard Sarah's loud voice. Hell, if it weren't for Paul Anderson, I wouldn't have had any real fun in my life. The group suddenly fell silent, and some of the women noticed me standing nearby. Realizing the lack of laughter, Sarah turned and saw me. The excess alcohol had clearly affected her judgment. Mike, I didn't know you were standing there. You weren't supposed to hear that, dear. My bad. She followed up with a few drunken giggles, like a little girl. The nearby women didn't know how to react. Some quietly walked away, while others just sat there in silence. Sarah looked at me with a silly smirk, as if she had done something mischievous. I placed my glass on a nearby table and slowly left the room. Instead of heading home, I went to the airport, and 40 minutes later, I was on a commuter flight to Boston. I liked Boston far more than New York. My relationship with Sarah now became much clearer. I understood things that had previously eluded me. A weekend in Boston would help clarify a few more things. I turned off my cell phone and had no trouble getting a room at one of the hotels. I opened an account with $2,500 in the casino's comp room. The interesting thing about casino accounts is that since they aren't banks, they aren't subject to federal regulations, so no reports are required to the government. If you win big bucks at a slot machine or in Keno, it has to be reported, but anything you deposit into your account is not traceable. I wasn't really interested in gambling but liked their banking setup. By the time I woke up, it was noon on Sunday. I was analyzing my situation over a sandwich and fries. I liked Boston. The climate was comfortable due to the altitude. Because of the gaming, there were plenty of reasonably priced services available nearby. I took a walk by the river to pay my respects to all the broken marriages. I wasn't planning on a Boston divorce, but might want to add my ring to the riverbed later. Returning to the hotel casino, I passed a real estate office with lots of pictures in the display window. Suddenly, the idea of a condo in Boston made sense. After an hour in the office and 2 hours of driving around, I found a small, furnished unit that I really liked. The problem was I couldn't buy it while I was married. Luckily, I managed to arrange a discreet lease-to-own agreement with a large deposit. The deposit was my idea, and the seller loved it. One of the best decisions I made early in my marriage was to manage and control the family finances myself. Sarah didn't have a knack for numbers or banking, and she was happy to let me pay the bills as long as she could spend the money. That evening, I treated myself to a beautiful sushi dinner before going to bed. I deposited another $8,000 from my credit card into the casino fund. I hated paying the cash advance fee, but it was worth it in this case. I was up bright and early the next morning and managed to catch breakfast at the casino restaurant. Eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast hit the spot. While killing time with my second cup of coffee, I noticed my waitress had a big shiner. She tried to hide it by combing her hair forward, but it wasn't working. She was an attractive woman in her early 40s. I watched her move from table to table, doing her best to keep everyone happy. I got the feeling this was new to her because she was trying too hard. An experienced waitress would have been smoother and more confident. She seemed determined to do a good job, and I admired that. Your name tag says Emily. Is that your real name? I asked. No, my name is Anna, but Emily was the closest tag they had, she replied. Well, Anna, I'll have one more cup of coffee and promise to leave a big tip if you tell me about the black eye. Why don't I pour you a refill, and you can leave a smaller tip, and I'll ignore your question. Fair enough. It was rude of me to pry. I already had the key to the condo, so I decided to get a few things to set up housekeeping. My first stop was down the street at a local used car lot. I grabbed a Corolla sedan with more miles on it than I'd care to mention. It wouldn't be great for long trips, but it was fine for running around. I could have rented, but I planned on coming back regularly for a while. For a couple $100, I got everything I needed to live comfortably, including a few changes of clothes. The rest of the day was spent opening accounts at several casinos. I wrote checks made out to each place, deposited the money, and it disappeared. No audit trail. By the end of the day, I had deposited $6 million at 4 different casinos. I got a small spiral notebook to carry in my pocket and record the amounts, dates, and casino names. This was a chronological record of the money I lost gambling over the weekend. Of course, I hadn't lost a dime, but who was going to challenge me? Everyone knew I was a lousy poker player, so any losses at roulette, craps, or blackjack would be believable. I had 6 months to come up with the down payment for the condo, which shouldn't be a problem. I totally forgot about lunch, so by the time dinner rolled around, I was starving. The easiest place to go was where I had breakfast. As luck would have it, Anna was my waitress again. Why are you still here? Looks like a long day. I have to work double shifts to get by. I didn't think rent would be so high here. Want something to drink? It was better not to be too nosy. I ordered my meal and tried to be a good boy for the rest of the time. When I finished, she brought my check and stopped for a moment. I'm sorry for being short with you this morning. I'm having a hard time adjusting here, and I'm a little self-conscious about the eye. It was a parting gift from my husband when I told him I was coming here to get a divorce. It's not the first one, but I hope it will be the last. Thanks for the nice tip at breakfast. It helps. She smiled as she walked away, but it was a sad smile. I thought about her the rest of the night. That night, I concluded there wasn't much more I could do right away. I had to get home to take care of a few things before setting up anything else here. I had no trouble getting a flight lined up for the return trip, but was unsure what to do when I got there. Anna was working the next morning, and I managed to get one of her tables. I stopped her when she dropped off the check after the meal. I have a small problem and was wondering if you could help me out. I have to leave today and won't be back for a week or so. I need someone to house sit for me. It's a 2-bedroom condo, so you wouldn't have to worry about any conflicts. Could you possibly help me out? It will be for at least a couple of months. Are you serious? No strings attached? I hate to leave the place alone. 90% of the time, it will be just you, and when I'm here, I'll stay out of your way, promise. I didn't care if someone broke in and cleaned the place out. There wasn't much to lose, but I couldn't let Anna know that. Okay, is it within walking distance of the diner? It's close, but I'm leaving you my car. Also, make sure it always has gas for when I come back. I'll call you ahead of time. There's a machine on the phone. Anna just stood there, looking at me. I think she was afraid it was a setup. I didn't have time to convince her otherwise. Here's the condo key and the car key. The car is parked at the condo. It's a dark gray Corolla. Here is the address for the condo. If you don't feel comfortable about it, don't go. I'll pick up the keys when I come back next Thursday. I wrote the address on a napkin and handed it to her. She took the napkin and keys, just staring at me. Anna, don't worry about it. If you do, it's fine. If you decide not to, it's still fine. An hour later, I was on my flight home. I would have rather stayed in Boston. After picking up my car at the long-term lot, I drove by the house. Sarah's car was gone, so I decided to get a few things for the rest of the week. I loaded the car with underwear, clothes, shoes, and my laptop. It took less than 15 minutes. I also grabbed my passport and birth certificate. The company had several kitchenette-type units on consignment, and my position authorized me to use one of them as I saw fit. I reserved it for the next 2 weeks. I put the laptop battery on the charger and then called my eldest daughter, Samantha. I told her that her mother and I were having some domestic problems and that I'd be tied up for a while. I asked her to explain it to her brother and tell him not to worry. Both of them were at Midwestern State University. I got a group discount but still had to pay out-of-state tuition. At least I could afford it. I hung up, put the cell phone on a charger, and hit the shower. The only thing I got to eat on the plane was a bag of pretzels. I was looking forward to a nice dinner. Monday was a busy day. Before doing anything else, I went to the bank and got a second mortgage on the house, a big one. I now owed more on the house than it was worth, but by the end of this month, that would change. I contacted Midwestern State directly from the bank, and we reached an agreement on prepaid tuition for the kids. The bank wired $2,500,000 directly to the school, which left me with a cashier's check for just over $1,250,000 to take to Boston. I cashed in 2 CDs, paid the penalty, and closed out the money market account. I decided to leave the credit cards alone until the end of the month. By that time, I was late for work. My faithful secretary, Jessica, was waiting with black coffee and a silly grin. "Morning, Mr. Taylor. Are you going to tell me what happened at the Bayside Club on Friday, or am I going to have to believe all the rumors?" "Jessica, the rumors are all true. Anything else you need to know?" Without blinking an eye, she responded, "What do you want me to do to help?" "Give me everything you can on Paul Anderson. I think he used to work here, but I'm not sure. Arrange to have all my scheduled work done by some of the staff, and don't give them a reason why. Any appointments or meetings I have set up should be shifted. Any questions so far?" I got a big smile and a thumbs up from Jessica as she left the office. I had originally figured it would take several weeks to arrange my affairs, but now I saw it could all be done in a week. I called my lawyer and arranged an immediate appointment. On the way out, I informed Jessica that I was not taking or responding to any calls from my wife, and security was not to allow her in the building. David Stevens was a friend of mine from college. We liked each other, but David never liked Sarah. I figured he would be the perfect guy to handle my divorce. "I was at the Bayside Club on Friday, Mike, so I think I know why you're here." "You're right. I'm not being a smart aleck, Mike, but it's about time." "You're right again. I figured as long as I wasn't being publicly humiliated, I could stand it." That ended Friday. "I need access to all of your accounts and a couple of powers of attorney. I'll have my assistant prepare everything and then give you a call. Anything special I should be aware of?" "Well, David, I'm afraid the trauma of what happened Friday triggered something in me. I find that I've become addicted to gambling. I spent the weekend in Boston and lost thousands of dollars. I'm going back next weekend, and I'm afraid it will be worse." "Gee, good buddy, that's terrible. I assume you're keeping some kind of record or documentation of all these losses." David had a big smile on his face. "I have, and I will. I guess it would be a good idea if I send you copies of everything?" "Most definitely. You know, Mike, I don't think we should talk about this anymore, do you?" "You're right. Do you need anything else?" "I'm good, Mike. Get out of here and take care of business. Take this financial worksheet with you, fill it out, and bring it back when you come in to sign those forms tomorrow." "I've got your back, buddy." It was around this time that I realized I had missed lunch. Jessica had a nice little sheet waiting for me with information about Paul Anderson. She recommended I speak to Karen Foster in the personnel department before doing anything else. Karen had been with the company forever, and she ran a tight ship. She always wore a business suit and kept her hair in a tight bun. Her confidence made her a bit intimidating to anyone who met her. If Jessica wanted me to see her, it must be important. Afternoon, Mr. Taylor. Have a seat. She was trying to put me at ease, but it wasn't working. It was like being in a room with a strict teacher. I was a grown man in an important position, yet I was in awe of this woman. She shut her office door. Jessica gave me a rundown of what's going on. I don't contribute to office gossip, but I do deal in facts. Paul Anderson came to me in confidence 3 years ago. I swore I wouldn't tell anyone what was discussed at that time, but it appears I cannot keep that promise. If at any time you're offended by something I say, please get up and leave, and our discussion will be over. If you don't like what you hear, don't get mad at me. I'm just giving you the facts. Do you understand, Mr. Taylor? Yes, I understand. I think I'm mature enough to accept whatever you tell me without throwing a temper tantrum. She frowned slightly at my attempt at humor. About 3 years ago, your wife, Sarah, approached Paul Anderson at a company function. There was heavy drinking that night, and before the evening was over, Paul and Sarah were having an affair in one of the private offices. Paul was getting married the next month. Sarah threatened to tell his fiancée unless he continued to meet her. He hoped that after he got married, she'd leave him alone, but she didn't. She forced him to continue seeing her for several months under the threat of exposure. In desperation, he came to me for help. Of course, he had to tell me the whole story. Naturally, I couldn't, in good conscience, tell you or anyone else. The best solution I had was to transfer Paul to another office. After his relocation to Denver, Sarah left him alone. Paul never told his wife about the problem. Any questions? It looks like Mr. Anderson was as much a victim in this fiasco as I was. I was contemplating some type of retribution, but that seems foolish now. Any recommendations, Miss Foster? Now that you know you have the power, I think you should let it die. Paul Anderson is a good employee and an asset to the company. Don't ruin him over something your wife did. Thanks for your time. I think you're right. Being forced to have an affair with my wife is punishment enough. As we stood, Karen smiled. By the way, it's not MS. I've been married for 30 years. It was hard to imagine Karen Foster in bed with a man. Maybe when she lets her hair down, she turns into some kind of goddess. I suddenly found myself thinking of a dominatrix and decided to change the subject mentally. I had more important things to worry about than Karen's love life. Jessica had rescheduled all my work, giving me a clean slate. My wife called 3 times, refusing to believe I was in Boston. Jessica set up an appointment for me with the company president the next day, and one with the legal department that afternoon. I asked Jessica to have dinner with me. She laughed and said her husband would disapprove. She suggested I ask Karen and laughed again. It took longer in the legal department than anticipated, and I kept a few people working overtime. I apologized, but they all seemed to understand. It turned out to be more complicated than expected. Redeeming my retirement plan for a cash settlement was difficult. Closing out the 401k and shared savings account went smoothly but took time. Cashing in my sick time, vacation time, and company insurance was easier. By then, it was apparent that I was leaving the company. I hoped it wouldn't leak back to my wife before I was done. I ended up eating dinner alone. For some reason, I thought about Anna during the meal. I wondered if she had moved into the condo and if she was still working double shifts. Although I hardly knew her, I was anxious to get back to Boston and see her. It seemed juvenile, and I tried to put it out of my mind. It was foolish to waste time on fantasies that would never happen. The next morning, I cashed in 2 whole life insurance policies and canceled 2 term policies. I was amazed at the cash value the whole life policies had grown to. I could pick up the checks the next morning. My car was covered by the company insurance, but I canceled the insurance on Sarah's BMW. The lease was in her name, but the insurance was in mine. Before going into work, I stopped by David's office, dropped off the financial form, and signed a bunch of papers his assistant had ready. Jessica had coffee ready when I got back to the office. It's not my intention to rub salt into your wounds, boss, but you need to talk to Kevin Roberts down in settlements before you see Richard. Richard Collins was the president of the company. I felt pretty sure he already knew what I wanted to see him about. The settlements division was in the basement, to be exact. I don't know why everyone else got windows and sunlight while they got the dungeon. Kevin, Jessica said you wanted to talk to me. Kevin Roberts was a quiet guy who always got his work done. He was no nonsense, dull but efficient. He steered me over to a private corner. I heard things were coming to a head in your office. I don't do gossip, but I felt you needed to know something. About 6 years ago, we had a guy named Robert King. He was an okay guy, married with 2 kids. He got involved with your wife after an office party. She kept calling him at home and here in the office. He knew he made a mistake and wanted to end it, but she wouldn't let him. She threatened to tell his wife if he tried to dump her. The dumb guy called her bluff. 2 days later, Robert's wife kicked him out. He started drinking and lost his job. I don't know where he is now. Anyway, Robert's wife threatened to tell you about your wife's affair. As I understand it, your wife gave her $20,000 to keep quiet. I have no proof about that last part. Thanks, Kevin. I wonder if anybody else has some good news for me? I wasn't trying to upset you, Mr. Taylor, but Jessica said I should tell you. You did the right thing. I appreciate it. I took the elevator straight up to the 10th floor. I was a little early for my appointment with Mr. Collins, but he took me right in. It was short and precise. The legal department, personnel department, and payroll would take care of everything for me. When the dust settled, I was to call him personally from wherever I was. He gave me a card with his private cell number on the back. There were no promises, no regrets, and no nonsense. Although things were wrapped up on one hand, they were kept open on the other. I gave him a simple nod and left. I hadn't spoken a word. Jessica was all smiles when I got back to the office. She handed me the usual cup of coffee. I smiled back and said, "Get me a flight to Boston for Thursday morning with a 2-hour layover in Denver." She motioned with her head for me to look out the window. Sarah was down in the parking lot, arguing with a security guard. She's been down there for over 30 minutes. They won't let her in, and she won't leave. What do you want to do, boss? Looks like the guards have everything under control. The only problem I have is finding somebody to have dinner with. I hate eating alone. I called David to see how things were going. He said he couldn't do anything until I straightened out the financial mess. I had to show him that I had no money. Right now, I was loaded. Between the checks I had, those that were coming, and the cash in the bank, I was a wealthy man. I promised I would go to Boston early and not come back until I was flat broke. Every once in a while, somebody would stick their head in the door and tell me that my wife wanted me to call her. She had all her friends call their husbands at work to find me. I hung around the office for a few more hours, cleaning things up so it would be easier for my replacement. Sarah was sitting on the hood of my car, waiting for me to come out. Jessica smiled and handed me the keys to her Honda Civic. She said it was a good excuse to get her hubby to pick her up and take her out for dinner. By the way, you're not going to do anything stupid in Denver, are you? No, just tying up some loose ends. No vengeance, I promise. I drove to Parkside and had my dinner at the Outback. I was back in my apartment before midnight. The next morning went fast. I signed more papers for David, closed all the bank accounts, and canceled all the credit cards. I even arranged to have all the utilities turned off at the house the following week. I picked up checks at the bank, insurance company, and work. I had no idea I was worth so much money. I got a new cell phone and canceled the ones that Sarah and I had. I sold my Bayside Club membership to an old friend for $3,000. My replacement was in place when I stopped in at work for the last time. He seemed like a nice guy. He came from Chicago with 24 hours notice. He knew it was a good move for him. Jessica knew more about running the office than I did, so there was no need for me to train him. There were some things at the house I wished I had, but they weren't important enough for me to go back for. Jessica told me to keep her car, and she would have her husband pick it up at the airport. I had to get a couple of cheap suitcases to put my stuff in at the apartment. Anything I forgot, I could buy in Boston. Suddenly, I realized that I had done everything I could do. All my assets were now in cash. There were no stocks, no accounts, and nothing else of value, except the house, which I was giving to my wife. American Airlines was accommodating. They had some seats available and were more than willing to move my flight up. I called David at home. "Hey, just wanted to let you know I'm cutting out tonight. I assume you have everything you need?" "I'm good, Mike. I can serve the papers tomorrow, but I still need that financial information as soon as possible. You might as well go ahead and give them to her. I'll start sending you some proof of financial irresponsibility as soon as I can. Be careful, Mike. I don't want to see either one of us get into trouble. I'm sure Sarah will get a big shot lawyer to help her, probably from New York." Of course, He'll be on contingency and could be on her as soon as things start to look bad. It's all up to you, David. Do the best you can for me. Just don't pad the bill too much. I'm going to be a very poor man soon. Don't forget that. One more thing. See if you can locate a guy named Robert King. There's a good chance he could use a little help, depending on the circumstances. I might be the one to do that. Got it, Mike. Have a good flight and keep in touch. I called the condo and left a message on the machine that I would be arriving later that night. I told Anna I would call and didn't want her to be alarmed when she heard someone at the door. At this point, I didn't know if she'd be there or not. I could hope. It was odd that I didn't even know this woman, and yet I was hoping to have some sort of relationship with her. At this point, just having her as a friend would be fine. Her situation made her vulnerable, and I didn't want to seem like I was taking advantage of it. I arrived in Denver early enough to have a comfortable breakfast. I was waiting in Paul Anderson's office when he came in. I could tell he wasn't happy to see me. Mr. Taylor, I'd like to say it's nice to see you, but I wouldn't be telling the truth. I think we both know that. Relax, Paul. I hope you don't mind my being a little familiar. I'm not here to bust your chops. I just wanted to let you know that I understand the situation you were in a while back and that there are no hard feelings. You could have done that on the phone. I know, but it was on my way, and I felt it was worth my time to clear the air. I don't understand. Why would you want to do this? I'm the one who screwed up. I should be apologizing to you for what happened. You didn't do a damn thing wrong. I was young and foolish and made a terrible mistake. To this day, I'm too ashamed to even tell my wife. You were partially to blame for what happened, Paul, but I feel that most of the problem was caused by my wife. What she did created problems for you, and now for me. I'm not saying you were completely innocent, but it wasn't entirely your fault. I don't want you to carry around any more guilt than you have to because my loving wife was a manipulator. That's very generous of you to say that. I don't know what to say or what to do in return. I reached over and handed him one of David's cards. Later today, give my lawyer a call. There's a possibility he might ask you to do something for me. It will be very discreet. He might say that he needs nothing at this time. At most, I expect he'll ask for a notarized statement confirming the affair. I promise it will not get back to your wife. I got up, and we shook hands. It felt odd since this was one of the men who betrayed me, but I thought it was appropriate. Paul Anderson was a fine man and didn't deserve to have his life compromised for one indiscretion, even though it had happened several times. An hour later, I was back on my flight to Boston. I was trying to figure out what I did wrong. I worked hard to provide my wife and children with everything they could want or need. I think I did a pretty good job. It seems that while I was making sure everyone was taken care of, I was neglecting my wife. When faced with problems like this, we all try to determine why it happened. In my case, I usually figure out that I was somehow to blame. I can accept that, but as the circle comes around, I'm forced to confront Sarah's attempts to make a fool out of me, which cannot be accepted or condoned. If she had been discreet, I probably would have let it all slide and forever blamed myself. She wasn't discreet, and I will not blame myself. The evening ended on a high note when I landed at Boston International. I was pleasantly surprised to see Anna waiting at the baggage pickup. She wore jeans and a light blue shirt. It was the first time I'd seen her in anything other than a uniform. I didn't intend for her to pick me up when I called. I simply wanted her to know I was arriving. Evening, Anna. I wasn't expecting you. I figured since I had your car, it was the least I could do. You're not working? No, I was able to cut back because of your generous offer. Oh, I wasn't being generous. I was just trying to figure out a way I could be alone with you. And just what are you going to do to me when you get me alone? I don't know yet. I haven't planned that far ahead. Any suggestions? As I pulled my bags off the turntable, I noticed Anna blush a little. I figured it was time to back off before I scared her away. I felt she was baiting me a little when she asked the question, which was a good sign. 40 minutes later, we were back at the newly decorated apartment. It was just little touches that didn't cost much, but made a difference in the ambience of the whole place. To thank her for fixing up the apartment and picking me up at the airport, I sprang for 2 prime rib dinners. I think Anna enjoyed the wine more than the beef. How's the divorce coming? Not worth a damn. I still have 4 weeks to go before I can apply. You need 6 weeks to establish residency. From what everybody said, I thought this would be a piece of cake. I think I would have been better off doing this from home. Why didn't you? Anna sat for a while, played with her food, and then looked up. Getting away from John was more important than getting the divorce. The divorce is just a piece of paper that won't protect me from any more beatings. I think I used the divorce idea as a way to escape. It didn't matter where I went. The important thing was that I went at all. What Anna said made sense to me. I guess getting divorced from Sarah seemed important at first, but now I wasn't sure. All I wanted to do was keep her from profiting from the marriage. Unless I was planning on getting married again, it didn't matter. I had no inclinations that way. The rest of the evening was spent chatting about more mundane things like hobbies, movies, and books. Anna didn't have any children. I didn't ask why. We slept in our separate bedrooms that night. Anna had left for work before I even got up. There was fresh coffee, and that was all I needed. I was still full from last night's feast. After a quick shower, I got down to business. David, how's my favorite lawyer? There was a sigh on the other end of the phone. Not worth a damn, Mike. I've got bad news for you. Promise you won't shoot the messenger? Oh crap. I've only been gone one day. What the hell happened? Sarah has stirred up the pot. She found out about the bank accounts and other stuff. After calling the police, she got a restraining order against everything in the world. All of your accounts are frozen, even though they are empty. You can't come near her or the house. You cannot take anything from the house. You cannot contact your children, even though they are legally adults. Most of the stuff is crap, but it will take a ton of time and money to straighten it all out if you want to. She contacted the SEC about your 401k and retirement accounts. Somehow, she has the IRS looking into things. David, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't want any part of it. I'm out. Do you understand? I was a bit overwhelmed. I guess you mean you won't be handling the divorce for me? You got it, buddy. For your information, she also hired a private detective to track you down. I wonder how she is going to pay for all of this. Don't know and don't care. Remember, if the cops or feds ask me where you are, I'll have to tell them. I'm not going to risk my career for you, even though we're friends. I understand, David. Cover your ass. I'm going to make some adjustments on my end. I won't call you again for a while. Thanks for your understanding, buddy. I was hoping you would see this through. Well, that put a crimp in things. The best laid plans can go to hell in a heartbeat. I had to go to plan B, and I didn't have one. My brilliant idea to fake losing all my money in the casinos was shot down. I decided not to call anyone else. Anna left me the car, which I appreciated. I don't know how she got to work. I was stuck with a small duffel full of money and checks. I had to go to 6 different casinos to cash all my checks for chips or credit. I was afraid to go to the banks in case there had been a hold or trace put on anything. The casinos were more than happy to help out. By the end of the morning, I had everything on deposit at several places and a bag full of cash and chips. After a quick lunch, I started the withdrawals. In 2 hours, all the chips had been converted to cash, and all the cash had been removed from the casino accounts. I now had a big bag of money and lots of it. So far, there had been no problems and nothing suspicious. It took less than an hour to drive to Carson City. I rented a large safety deposit box at an obscure little bank and stashed everything except $7,000, which I kept for walking around money. I felt relieved now that everything was safe. I was looking forward to another long dinner with Anna to celebrate. I knew something was off as soon as I entered the condo. Anna was trying her best to straighten things out that should not have been messed up in the first place. She looked up at me and immediately covered part of her face. I'm sorry, Mike. It's my fault. I don't know how he found me and didn't know he was following me until I got into the apartment. I should have been more careful. I'm really sorry. I slowly lowered her hand away from her face. Anna had a new shiner and a fat lip to go with it. A large bluish bruise covered the right side of her face. Was it John? She nodded her head. He had his 2 brothers with him. They're out looking for you now. John told me not to leave the condo. Where are they looking? I gave them the names of 3 casinos. The idiots don't even know what you look like. I don't think they're thinking straight. It was a no-brainer. We couldn't stay, and we couldn't call the cops. We left everything, started driving west, and spent the night in a small off-road motel in Grass Valley. It only had 1 bed, but I was a gentleman. I brought some takeout back to the room and got some makeup for Anna. She tried her best to cover up the bruises, but it still looked bad. She kept apologizing to me all night. I was relieved when she finally fell asleep. We drove into Sacramento the next day and got some clothing and personal items. I had no idea when we'd be able to get back to the condo. I had the Grass Valley Motel for 2 more nights. Anna and I spent the next few days getting to know each other. There was no intimacy and no innuendo. I felt more comfortable with her after 3 days than I did with my wife after 18 years. When I wasn't talking with Anna, I was worrying about all the other things that were happening. I was afraid to take Anna back to the condo in case John would find her. I was afraid to go back to the condo myself in case somebody was looking for me. But I carelessly left my laptop, passport, and other personal papers there. I had a stupid idea that they were important to me, and I had to get them. Real stupid. I only knew Anna a few days, but I decided I had to trust her. We were both in the same boat as far as spouses were concerned. Have you ever been to Mexico? No. Are we going to go to Mexico, Mike? I don't know. Look, in case things don't go well, I want you to do something for me. I don't want you to get in trouble, and I want to keep you away from John. Mike, you don't owe me anything. You've done more than enough already. I'll be fine. Well, I'm not sure how things are going to go for me. I have a lot of money stashed away. It's not dirty money, but I'm hiding it from my wife. If something happens to me, you will have to retrieve the cash for me. Who is after you? You haven't said anything about that. Did you do something illegal? Look, several federal agencies are looking for me, along with a private detective. I'm sure the local police will be called in to help if necessary. All I'm trying to do is hide some money from my wife. She's trying to make it look like I'm doing something illegal. What am I supposed to do with this money? I was thinking about that. Go to Guadalajara and wait for me. Use whatever money you need to get by until I get there. How will you find me? Go to the Libertad Market for coffee every morning. I will find you. It's a big place, but I will find you. When am I supposed to do this? When you figure out I'm in trouble. Why don't I just do it now? The conversation was starting to get redundant, so I ignored her. I didn't mean to be impolite, just anxious to move along. 2 hours later, we were over the pass and in Carson City. Anna's name was put on the access for the safety deposit box, and she got her own key. When we got back to the condo, I parked half a block away. The complex had a lower-level parking area under the units. It was open to the outside but covered. I told Anna to wait in the car until I was sure there wouldn't be a problem. What sort of problem? I have no idea. The way things have been going lately, anything could happen. And it did. I was walking through the parking area, looking for anything suspicious when it happened. Mike Taylor turned around. He was a little man, sort of wiry. The long leather coat he wore made him look weird instead of sinister. He wasn't menacing enough to pull it off, though the large black automatic in his fist was. Do I know you? A big smile crossed his face as if he was proud to identify himself. My name is Leo. Your wife sent me. Okay, what can I do for you? I need your wedding ring and your wallet. I can understand the wedding ring, but why the wallet? I have to make this look like a robbery. Make what look like a robbery? Your wife hired me to kill you, Mr. Taylor. I hope she paid you up front because she doesn't have any money. What do you mean? That was the end of the conversation. From across the parking area came 3 large men who did look nasty in their long leather coats. Mike Taylor, we want to talk to you. John was one loud dude. The intrusion caught Leo by surprise. He turned to face the 3 of them, and when one of them noticed the gun in his hand, all 3 of them reached into their coats as I dove across the concrete barrier leading to the outside of the parking area. Leo lost all interest in me for the moment. As I scooted along the side of the building toward the car, I could hear shots echoing off the garage walls. I looked up in time to see Anna speeding down the street and 2 guys in suits getting out of a black SUV across the street. It was obvious that the suit guys were feds, and I assumed they were waiting for me. The firefight distracted them long enough for me to get out of the area. Anna was gone, the car was gone, and there was no way in hell I was going back to that condo. I didn't know who shot whom in the parking garage, and I didn't want to know. All I knew for sure was that 3 different groups were after me for different reasons at the same time. I got the message. I had several options at this point. One was to catch a bus to Carson City and get my money. I decided against this idea since I was too hot. Yeah, hot, that's a good word. I was just trying to get away from a cheating wife. What the hell happened? Since I decided to let the money cool for a while, I had to find a place to lay low. I still had over $10,000 in my pocket. That would hold me for a while. Why was my wife trying to kill me? I guess she didn't realize there was no longer any insurance money. I figured she was smarter than that. I checked in with the kids, and everything was fine. They felt better after they found out the tuition had been prepaid. They wanted to know what happened between Sarah and me, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them. Some things would have to wait. I borrowed a car and drove up to Carson City. The safety deposit box was empty. At least she could have left a note. I couldn't really complain because I gave her the key and access to the box. Did she go to Guadalajara, or did she find a place where I couldn't find her? There was only one way to find out. There were several small travel agencies in my neighborhood in San Francisco. Most of them specialized in group tours for like-minded people, which I didn't quite fit into. I finally found a tour to my favorite Mexican city with a last-minute cancellation that I could qualify for. It was the first time in my life that I had to scrape together enough money for something. The trip wasn't that expensive. I just didn't have much money. I felt comfortable because a few of the guys on the trip worked at the restaurant with me. Most of them had signed up for the side trips, but I had other plans. The first 2 days turned out to be a big disappointment. The Libertad market was bigger than I had imagined. I see now that it was a poor choice on my part. I hated to think that maybe Anna had decided to take my money and go someplace a little more exotic. Maybe she was in Bangkok or Tahiti. Lord knows there was enough money in that safety deposit box to live just about anywhere she wanted. I didn't know if I should sit and wait for her to walk by, or if I should walk around and look for her. I ended up doing both. By the third day, it was getting dull. It's about time, Mike. Where the hell have you been? I turned and saw Anna standing with her hands on her hips. She had on a wide-brimmed straw hat with a red band around it. Say something, damn it. I've been going nuts here not knowing if you were even alive or not. I didn't say anything. I walked over and kissed her for the first time. I don't know why I hadn't done it before, but I was glad I did it now. That's a pretty pathetic explanation. Maybe you better try it again. The second kiss was accompanied by a big hug as I swung her around off the ground. Anna, I missed you so bad. You still have to tell me where you were for the last month, but I can wait until later. Let's go home and have some lunch. We walked through the market hand in hand. I felt happy and content for the first time in a while. Mike, don't get mad at me, but I spent some of your money. I put most of it in the bank, but I needed a place to live, so I bought us a house. I was hoping you wouldn't mind because you had an awful lot of money in that bank. It was a beautiful home in a beautiful city, and I was with a wonderful woman. I like it when a plan comes together. Sarah's parents were able to raise her bail money and pay for her lawyers. David had no trouble getting her signature on the divorce papers. She ended up getting 7 to 10 years for trying to have me killed. Never did find out why. Paul Anderson gave David a deposition, but David never had to use it. David was able to find Robert King. He was sober but not doing well. When David asked him what he could do to help, Robert said he would like to have a hot dog pushcart. I got to feel better for $3,500. I settled my beef with the IRS for $7,500. Leo went to jail in Nevada with Anna's husband and brothers. We don't know how long they will be there. I was now free to return home. My old job, with a promotion, was waiting for me. The law was no longer looking for me. As soon as Anna's Mexican divorce is final, we plan to get married. The kids will be coming down for the wedding during spring break. The house in Guadalajara is beautiful, but we're pretty certain we won't stay there full time. Anna wants to keep it as a vacation home. Jessica is anxious for me to return to work, especially in the new position. It's a promotion for both of us. Anna is willing to go anywhere as long as we stay together. She wants me to take her to meet Sarah. That should be interesting. My plans did not work out as I expected, but who am I to complain? Thanks for following this wild story as it unfolded. If you were in Mike's shoes, what would you have done differently? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next jaw-dropping tale. See you in the next video.